Good evening, everybody. We begin with another extraordinary, bizarre twist in the radical Dems and deep state's effort in the persecution of former Trump National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. Clinton-appointed judge Emmett Sullivan is now demanding the entire D.C. Court of Appeals, which overruled him. He wants them to rehear the decision from 2 weeks ago, a decision from that three-judge panel that, well, created an end to Flynn's case, calling upon the judge to dismiss the case and move on. Judge Sullivan refuses to do what his bosses in judicial terms told him. Judge Sullivan is again proving he's a partisan activist trying to destroy the life of General Flynn. And, by the way, not making the judiciary look any better. The D.C. Court of Appeals doesn't have to take up the judge's request. We'll see what happens. Judge Sullivan's decision follows a major day at the Supreme Court, a day of important victories, again, for President Trump. The justices closed out their term by delivering split opinions on two cases concerning the release of President Trump's tax returns and financial records. In separate rulings, justices delivered a victory for President Trump in blocking the radical Dems in Congress from having access to the president's financial records. At the same time, the High Court also ruled President Trump, nor does any president in their ruling, have absolute immunity from prosecution, as if that was the issue. And the ruling by the court is that Manhattan's activist, left-wing Democrat Cy Vance, the Manhattan district attorney, can have access to those documents and can subpoena his tax returns from his accounting firm. In this instance, a contradictory and, again, extraordinary ruling from a court that is obviously simply left its moorings. During a news briefing, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany focused on the radical left's coordination with the radical Dems, in this case, the Manhattan DA, as they work to harass and subvert President Trump.
Justice Thomas noted that the district attorney for the County of New York, Cyrus Vance, served a subpoena on the president's personal accounting firm that, quote, was nearly identical to a subpoena issued by a congressional committee requesting nearly 10 years of the president's financial records. So the partisan attorney, the Democrat from New York, is aiding and abetting the Democrats, the lawless Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, who have pursued this president with bogus charges of collusion, with bogus charges in the impeachment inquiry, and are now pursuing this only to be rebuked by the Supreme Court and assisted by Cy Vance.
President Trump today making his displeasure with those rulings very clear indeed.
The rulings were basically starting all over again, sending everything back down to the lower courts, and you start all over again. And so from a certain point, I'm satisfied. From another point, I'm not satisfied, because frankly, this is a political witch hunt, the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. It's a pure witch hunt. It's a hoax, just like the Mueller investigation was a hoax that I won, and this is another hoax. This is purely political.
The president likes the word hoax. I prefer the word overthrow. They're trying to overthrow the president of the United States. They're trying to block his very agenda. They are trying to dismiss him as president of the United States with these ridiculous rulings in which they would allow a local district attorney to prosecute a sitting president of the United States. That is idiotic. Absolutely idiotic, and there is no basis whatsoever in either law or reason to have come to that conclusion. Only one reason, and that has everything to do with politics. President Trump today also railing against corrupt members of the Obama administration. They were caught spying on his 2016 campaign. They were caught spying on his presidency. They have yet to face any form of accounting or justice. And he tweeted this in part: "We have a totally corrupt previous administration, including a president and vice president who spied on my campaign and got caught, and nothing happens to them. This crime was taking place even before my election. Everyone knows it, yet all are frozen stiff with fear." U.S. Attorney John Durham, leading the investigation of the origins of Spygate, Obamagate, and Fox News reports today he is also facing heightened pressure to finish his investigation by the end of the summer, read before the election in November. Sources now say if Durham fails to complete the remaining lines of his investigation, he might wait until after the election to reveal his findings. That would be unconscionable. President Trump today launched an initiative for bringing more prosperity to Hispanic Americans. He signed an executive order to improve access to educational and economic opportunity. President Trump highlighted the achievements of the Hispanic community under his administration.
Before the plague from China came in, you know what that is? That's the China virus. Before it came in and hit us, we achieved the lowest Hispanic American unemployment rate and the lowest poverty rate ever recorded. We achieved the highest ever incomes for Hispanic Americans and many other American groups. Under our leadership, the Hispanic American high school graduation rate has reached an all-time high in the history of our country. As long as I'm president, I will never let your charter schools be taken away from you, be taken down. I will never let you down. I will never let Hispanic American or any American down. That I can tell you.
Good for President Trump. And he is working to bring back jobs for Hispanic Americans as well, and all who are out of work because of the China virus pandemic. Today, it was announced that 1.3 million Americans had applied for initial jobless claims. That number represents a 14-week decline, more Americans beginning to go back to work. It is a real sign of a strong trajectory for recovery. On Wall Street, stocks were mixed. The Dow fell 361 points. The S&P fell 18. But the Nasdaq hit yet another record close, up 55 points on the day. And volume on the big board, 4.9 billion shares traded. Crude oil lost more than 3%, breaking below $40 to $39.52 a barrel. A reminder, listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Well, a new report today claims some of President Trump's aides are trying to hold him back from fighting culture wars as part of his re-election strategy. Politico wrote that advisors are pushing President Trump to focus instead on the economy and law and order, ignore China, ignore the culture wars. But President Trump is once again showing he knows his voters best. In a new interview with Real Clear Politics, the president says this: we are in a culture war. If the Republicans don't toughen up and get smart and get strong and protect our heritage and protect our country, I think they're going to have a very tough election. I think he is exactly right. President Trump also making it clear where he stands ahead of the election in November and how he will differentiate himself from the radical ideology of, well, left-wing Joe Biden. The former vice president already allowing the socialist agenda of Bernie Sanders to infiltrate his agenda, the two releasing a host of radical policy recommendations for the Democratic National Committee and soon its platform. Sanders says if Biden follows those recommendations, he'll be the most progressive president since FDR. Here's what that progressive platform sounds like.
Are you guys in the rain? Or is that not rain? I thought that was rain.
Where's the Wilmington, the Delaware State News? I mean, Delaware News Journal, I should say. That's my hometown team. I better call on them.
And my team and your team are already working closely together to light up the path forward here. Critical laws like the PRO Act to strengthen collective bargaining. On politics like prevailing and look. I guess I'm taking too much time, but
you're a lying dog.
That you are subject to.
And I can hardly wait to compare my cognitive capability to the cognitive capability of the man I'm running against. Thank you so much.
We turn now to Ed Rollins, the top strategist for Great America PAC, former Reagan White House political director, Fox Business political analyst. Ed, we're watching Joe Biden turn to the left and turn hard. He may make Bernie Sanders look like a moderate before this is over. How does President Trump exploit this extraordinary radical left turn on the part of the Democrat Party's nominee?
There's two things the president has to do. One is he has to be focused 100% on the economy, get this economy moving again, argue that he did it once, he can do it again, and obviously do something about the virus. He has to get the virus out of the way as best he can and be as helpful as he can, even though it's now a state and local problem as opposed to a national. The key thing here for him is don't get distracted. Don't get into 100 different things. Stay very focused on what he did when he ran 4 years ago. Getting people back to work is very key now, and basically fighting the virus. About leadership.
And he, in that campaign, as you remember, in 2016, he kicked everyone's butt who got in his way. This is a more constrained President Trump. China, how big an issue should he make it? Because it is awfully, awfully big for us as a nation.
Well, I think he has talked about it all the way through, and he's going to continue to talk about it. But the reality is the voters that he has to go after at this point in time, he's lost a little bit of senior voters. They're very concerned about the virus. He has to convince them that he cares about them. People going back to work, they're very worried about jobs. Obviously, you can hook China into that. But the key thing here is he has to show strength. This is about leadership. Joe Biden sitting on the range today listening to birds chirp, which is in the background. I watched that whole speech and there were birds chirping all through it, is not going to make anything that's going to change the dynamics here. He's just the alternative on if you don't want Trump, he's the alternative. But Trump has the ball. He can run with it. He can score big points if he stays focused. He has to stay focused, though.
Ed Rollins, as always, thank you very much. Good to see you. Up next, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio ignores the surge Trump century. How our president changed the course of history forever. It's available for pre-order. It's coming out in the fall. It's now available at the TrumpCentury.com for pre-order. Please go there and, well, help yourself to as many copies as you would like to order. Stay with us. We're coming right back. Well, the U.S. Army says they made a mistake in distributing a handout that labeled the phrase, "Make America Great Again," an example of white supremacy. This from the United States Army. They made a mistake. The handout invited soldiers and civilian personnel at the Army's Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama, to attend seminars entitled, quote, Operation Inclusion. I mean, this is outrageous. Somebody should be fired, and I would start with the Secretary of the Army, maybe the Secretary of Defense. I mean, this is ignorance. The handout featuring slides with what it considered examples of white supremacy. They include celebration of Columbus Day. Talk about mindless, reactionary fools. My God. It's just the celebration of American exceptionalism can't be tolerated. The phrase all lives matter, you can't say that if you're in the Army. The Army has since recalled those handouts and launched an investigation to how it happened. That'll take them 7 months at the rate this Army is doing things here of late. Hopefully they can break that down to maybe a couple of days. What do you think? Well, breaking tonight, the leftist city of Seattle holding a racially segregated training session last month. Does that sound like we're going forward or backward? Separating races, as they instructed white city staffers to undo their whiteness, and that racism isn't all their fault, but they are responsible. I mean, this country is going nuts. Certainly Seattle is. Other things, the white city staffers were told by their superiors in Seattle they have to give up in order to be, quote, accomplices for racial justice. Get that, accomplices for racial justice. Good Lord. Things such as comfort, give that up. Guaranteed physical safety at times. Control over other people and the land. Relationships with other white people. And accepting jobs and promotions when not qualified. Good Lord. New York City's version of Seattle is the Matter movement comes as 179 New York Police Department officers filed for retirement between June 29 and July 6, a 411% increase over the same period a year ago. The cops have had a bellyful of this mayor and the nonsense that he is, well, leading in this city. And this is a city in pain. And the overwhelming number of retirement applications. NFL player, Republican candidate for Utah's 4th District. He won the primary last week, and we are delighted to have you with us, Burgess. What is your reaction to the Black Lives mural, this mantra now that is falling on the lips of everyone in media, it seems, and the radical Dems? Black Lives Matter, and you go to hell if you say all lives matter.
Well, Lou, first of all, it's good talking with you again, and this is the reason why I'm running. Yes, Burgess for Utah, by the way. Yeah, what we're seeing, and what's nice about where we are today, we've been talking about for years, hypothetically, what Marxism and socialism looks like. Because they are frantic, because they realize the curtain's about to be pulled back, because they realize with the election of President Trump and recouping the House and Senate, their days are done. These guys are frantic. But we also understand that this has been something we've been going after us for decades. We have, right now, in leadership, people going through our Marxist laboratories of these colleges, and they're just now in power. So you still have a small group of people that are empowered, that runs those things that really runs our lives. But the American people are smart enough. We are drawn toward freedom. We hate tyranny. It's within our DNA. And I can promise you, Lou, this is the time that Democrats, Independents, and Republicans that love America have to start having conversations. We're going to start saying, you know what, this is crazy, this is nuts. Even though they might not come out and say it because nobody wants to be called a racist, the fact that all lives matter should not be a topic that we should be debating. Any common sense, any nation, particularly our nation, that's all been about freedom, about service, we all know that all lives matter. Only the leftists, only the godless could ever make that an issue where now people looked at being a racist. So we're going to come out of this. I just have so much faith in American people. We're going to get it. And those guys they're frantic. They're going crazy because they know how close it is to coming to an end.
Yeah, and I agree with you, and I'm about as optimistic as anyone can be, but I'm also, that optimism of mine at least, is based on people who are strong and courageous enough to step forward and put themselves on the line in the arena, like Burgess Owens. You know, without people of that kind of strength and character, I mean, you look at Capitol Hill right now, and I'm only going to point my hand toward the Rhino Republicans. My God, Burgess, they're quiet. They sit on their hands. Yeah. They get run over by the left. And by the way, in that, they become enablers. They're complicit with this madness and permitting it. In point of fact, they end up supporting it de facto.
Well, yeah, you're right. And the only reason we know the difference is because we have a president who's such a stark difference from the way it's been done in the past. The elitists of the past, those who have just gone along, those who have enabled the leftists, their days are numbered. And I'll just say this, Lou, look at what's happened to the black community. I've been a Republican for 30 years. I've never seen the walkaway program, the Blexus program, blacks that are old, young, rich, poor, where they might not be speaking up, but we are leaving the plantation. That's what scares the left so much. So if we're an indication of where our country's going, we're going to be okay. We just have to keep hopeful, keep focused, be engaged. Don't let people get to the point where they keep you from going to the polls and getting your votes done. We have to be out there and competing at the polls. That's what it comes down to.
And competing at the polls is, in my opinion, Burgess, exactly what this set all of this off. That's the reason Black Lives Matter became so energized, is when exactly the moment that President Trump's approval rating amongst African Americans in this country went above 20%, that's when all hell broke loose. And I think you're exactly right.
Can I just say this, Lou, real quick? Can I say this?
Yes, sir.
Can I say this? Evil works its hardest, fights the hardest before the dawn. The dawn is coming. America needs to understand that it's within our DNA. We're always hopeful, and we fight when we know when there's a battle to be fought. We're going to win this. The leftists will lose at the end of the day, so just keep hopeful.
Absolutely. And please, sure as hell, everybody, keep fighting. Burgess Owens, good luck. Thanks for being here. And congratulations again on your victory. Up next, will we see John Durham's report, his investigation of Spygate, Obamagate, before the election, before the end of summer? Or is there something at work here holding back that conclusion? John Solomon joins me here next, right after these quick messages. Please stay with us. And a programming note, we want you to know we'll be talking with White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows here on the broadcast about the president's fight against the radical left and the efforts of those radical Dems in the deep state to continue to try to overthrow his presidency and subvert his agenda. We're joined now by John Solomon, award-winning investigative reporter, editor-in-chief of Just the News. John, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Luke.
I've got to start with John Durham.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this. This show has been pointing out that this judiciary, this Justice Department is slow rolling the American people. It isn't just the radical Dems on Capitol Hill. Yeah. This is a major act, in my judgment, of treason. And I mean not in a legal sense, but they're betraying the damn country. And it's nothing less than that. The idea, as they floated out today, that John Durham would not have an investigation ready by the end of the summer, as the Attorney General himself suggested strongly that they would do, it now may fall to after the election. That is criminal. That is just criminal, in my opinion. I want to hear yours.
Yeah, listen, I've seen a lot of activity over the last 3 or 4 months showing that they're building a criminal case. I think there's going to be a split the baby sort of solution here, and that is that there may be some actions around Labor Day, a handful of indictments or a plea bargain that comes out that begins to tell the story. But there is a little bit of a rope-a-dope going on. The case has slowed down a little bit, and I think they're sending flares that this is going to carry on past the election. I still think, based on the evidence I'm seeing, the actual activity, witnesses being interviewed, documents changing hands, that there is still the possibility of some indictment, some criminal action in September. And some of the excuses we hear don't make sense. We hear, all right, there was COVID, there aren't grand juries. Well, a grand jury was able to indict Giselle Maxwell in New York just last week. It can't be that hard to get this done. And certainly, Lord knows, the evidence is standing in public. The case has already been made in public.
Well, I mean, what we're really hearing from this Attorney General and this Justice Department is that this isn't a priority. To know who tried to overthrow the President of the United States, to hold accountable Justice Department officials, intelligence community officials, and department and agency leaders within that IC. And frankly, how many people in the White House were involved, how many people in the White House were actually controlling Spygate and the greatest scandal in this country's political history. I mean, this is a nonsensical, as you put it, this is nonsensical. That Ghislaine Maxwell is more damn important than getting to the root of a massive political corruption in the federal government? My God, man. This is outrageous on every level.
Yeah, listen, I talk to people all across the country who are scratching their heads wondering what's going on. I do believe that the Attorney General has made this a top priority. I've seen the actions of John Durham. I do see a lot of activity. He's been digging in. But remember, they still rely on the same bureaucracy that gave us these first cases. And I think there's a little bit of a rope-a-dope going on in the bureaucracy, and it's time for the leadership of the Justice Department to take control, set a deadline, and get it done.
Well, let's talk about the bureaucracy. The deep state extends, obviously, to the Supreme Court. These decisions today on making available to the DA of Manhattan, Cy Vance, a left-winger in absolute coordination and orchestration with the radical Dems on Capitol Hill, can proceed with a subpoena of the accounting firm for the president and get his tax records, and the Supreme Court ruling at the same time. Congress cannot. I mean, who the hell do they think they're kidding? They're one and the same.
They are some head scratchers, right? And I think the good news for the president.
But you've got a lot of head scratching going on, John.
I do. In fact, I'm losing my hair because of it.
I have a lot of agita. I am so sick of looking at this nonsense and people saying, well, what the hell, we'll catch it next quarter, or we'll do something maybe next year.
Yeah.
Who the hell is this Justice Department to say it takes this long to do a damn investigation? They have killed every investigation, killed every opportunity at getting to the truth, and we're damn fools to put up with it, in my judgment. Let's go on with the damn courts.
The frustration is legitimate. I understand it because I hear it from lots of people in many different corners. I just came back from the Middle America, Wisconsin, where I heard a lot of this, which is, why does it take so long to get these issues resolved? Why can't you get the people's business done and move on and bring people to justice? Hasn't happened.
The judiciary, do you believe it's as corrupt as every other part of the Justice Department and the FBI?
Well, listen, I think all of our institutions that used to be apolitical have shown increasing signs of politics, whether it's Pete Strzok's emails, Judge Emmett Sullivan's rope-a-dope and not dismissing the case against Flynn. You're seeing institutions that used to be apolitical now dripping with politics, and that's bad for the future of America's democracy. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. You know, we've seen a lot of people in the streets here lately. I'm thinking it's starting to look like all Americans are going to have to get in the street to get to be taken seriously. It's really asinine to see what we are witnessing with the left-wing media trying to control speech and thought, the left in this country trying to dismember this great nation of ours, and people sitting around going, well, what the hell? You know, maybe we'll figure it out in time. It's time now, I believe, John. I
the
hope
American
you do as
people
well.
have the American people have the ultimate weapon. When they go to that ballot box in November, or when they mail in their ballot in September, they have a chance to take back their country, and I think that is what this election's about. It's a choice about the America that we've come to love and enjoy and prosper in, and an America that will be run by anarchists. And I think that's what's at stake in this election.
Yeah. And anarchists, might as well be anarchists, all the people wanting to vote by mail instead of following an election filled with both safeguards and integrity. John Solomon, as always, good to talk with you. I feel all better, pretty much. Up next, White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows joins us with reaction to today's Supreme Court rulings, and we'll be talking with him. Also, how quickly can the United States decouple